Hello there guys, what is going on? Daniel Childs back here again for my rational perspective on Borussia Dortmund 1, Chelsea 0, Chelsea lose in the first leg. And man, when you think this season can't get any more painful, it adds an extra layer onto it. I think my analysis is I think Chelsea played well. I think that Chelsea created enough opportunities to score more than once tonight. And it's kind of just like the classic Chelsea problem that we've been seeing for so many years now at Stamford Bridge, which is just a lack of a ruthless edge. You know, you look at the amount of shots on target compared to Borussia Dortmund, and there are similarities between Saturday's game for me. You know, I think that there was a lot of positives about Saturday, but it was one lapse in defensive concentration that cost Chelsea. And it's just, I think it's really difficult, you know, and it's really difficult again. Chelsea have to wait for another game on Saturday to find that, you know, confidence again, because these players are taking a lot of knocks, and I think they are playing better. I think it's irrational to come away from tonight's game and think that Chelsea were woeful. They did absolutely nothing. You know, I think it's irrational to look at this performance and go, what were Chelsea trying to do? Because I just don't think the stats from the game, and I don't think the evidence of what was in front of you tonight showed you a team that lacked ideas of how to get the ball into dangerous areas. That wasn't the problem tonight. The problem was a consistent problem we've seen, which is a finishing touch. Joao Felix had some good opportunities. Ziyech had some good opportunities. It was just so infuriating. It really was. And then, you know, there were moments of misfortune for Chelsea at times. The fact that the corner that goes into the winner for Adeyemi isn't called for offside. Emre Can just gets his leg there at the right time to clear the ball off the line after a Koulibaly effort. And that's, you know, Joao Felix hits the bar in the first half. You know, there are moments like that where you do kind of think it just shows, you know, those fine margins that are just going against Chelsea. And it's not, you know, to make excuses. I think that Chelsea were poor in that costly moment. You know, the structure of the team can be blamed. Why is only one person back against Borussia Dortmund of all teams in that ground? It's like one of the most obvious things is you get done by transition. It's a Bundesliga team. They're the most transition team ever, and you get done on a transition that cost you the game. So I think you can be critical the structure-wise for Chelsea there, but I don't think that, for me, my personal opinion is that the performance was woeful tonight. And you know that's what makes it a little bit harder. I think in sort of looking, you know, in the long term, is that we still are integrating new players. I think it's a real positive that we're seeing Ben Chilwell and Reece James back on the pitch. I think Reece, as the game went on, started to look a lot more like himself. I think he gained a lot of confidence. Ruben Loftus-Cheek, I think, is proving at a point in the season once again that he can be a very valuable player. And we've got players coming back, and I just, you know, it's so infuriating, because there are times you're watching in recent weeks, but it's like we are close to what I think would be you win the game at Anfield. That's a massive win. We even beat Fulham. I think that'd be a really positive win, even though it's not you can't class beating Fulham at home as a massive win, but, you know, very confidence boosting win after the January transfer window. But, you know, it's always that kind of coach versus players thing, right? And I think that tonight's just such a prime example of how it's not always simple to blame a coach, because we said this, you know, it's a similar problem that I think Thomas Tuchel ran into, is that if the players aren't putting away the chances and we're creating good opportunities, you know, I'm more infuriated as a fan if I watch games where I don't see much optimism, excitement, just as a fan, to get off your seat to feel like the team can score a goal. That wasn't tonight, but it felt so Groundhog Day. And that's just what makes this season so difficult. If you are new around here, make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to share this video around. If you want to listen to the podcast, thank you so much for tuning in as well. If you are listening after this, Son of Chelsea is a part of the 90 Min Podcast Network. I think I was 2 off my predicted starting 11. Koulibaly and who was it? Koulibaly and Loftus-Cheek were the two players I predicted. Kovacic, he didn't play any part tonight. Neither did Dennis Zakaria. Kind of makes sense. These are two players who've just come back from injury. Even Wesley Fofana was on the bench, which, with these big Champions League squads that you have, you kind of just throw everyone on the bench effectively. We had two goalkeepers on the bench, which was weird, but that's the Champions League nowadays. But I like the team. I like the shape we're sticking with. I mean, as the game went on, I think that, it was hard to know whether it was a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-4-2. I think that Felix and Havertz, particularly in the first half, were operating for me more as kind of a close front two. Not entire. It made chances, but Mikhailo Mudryk, I thought was going to get a lot more into this game. I think there were sparks with Ben Chilwell. Was kind of, you saw how a dynamic fullback alongside Mikhailo Mudryk could really make some issues for defenses. Mudryk going out wide, Ben Chilwell doing kind of his inward run, which we've seen before from Chelsea, and I thought that made me excited about, once again, the future of what those two could do. But it was lopsided, and as well, it very much, as the half went on and as the game went on, Mudryk unfortunately faded once again and was replaced, I think, by Mason Mount in the second half. It was a frantic, chaotic first half. 11 shots from Dortmund, but I think the closest either team got was Chelsea, and that was through João Felix. The link up with Kai Havertz was really encouraging. It really was, and I think that I'm happy to be proven wrong on João Felix. I sort of made jokes about some of the stuff that has been said about João Felix in regards to Mason Mount in recent years, and I think that João Felix was someone that I looked at Atletico Madrid, and I just was kind of unconvinced, what could he become as a player. But he's come to Chelsea, and you can sort of look at the game tonight and go, well, he doesn't score the chances, but he clearly is offering something Chelsea technically on the ball, the way he's able to hold possession or at least win a foul, just change the tempo of things, the nice care within his passing. That I think it's proving me wrong, and I think is looking like a player that could be a really influential one for the rest of the season. He had a good performance on Saturday, scored a goal. Unfortunately, couldn't get that goal tonight. But definitely, I think with Kai Havertz, what Kai Havertz has been struggling with, I felt that there were moments within the games where those two players linked up quite well, which we saw all the way back at Fulham on Felix's debut. I want to go to the second half because Chelsea started the half well. We had really, whilst the first half was quite chaotic and kind of very transition heavy, very Bundesliga style, I think the second half was much more Chelsea trying to compose things, trying to get on the ball, press, and sort of pen Dortmund back in their own half, and I think it was working well. But then, and it looked like Chelsea could score. Reece James had a good free kick that was saved by Kobel, who had a really good performance from a Dortmund perspective. One person to defend a corner, I think is a worrying thing to happen. And with the way Chelsea are going at the moment, we're not scoring many goals at all. We are, defensively, we're not awful. But when you have, I'm sorry if you're a long-term viewer and listener, I say this phrase a lot, margin for error. I'm mainly talking about in the final third, but it also, reflects on your defense, and it also creates extra pressure and puts pressure on your defense. If you are not scoring goals, there is no margin for error with that defense, because if you concede one goal, you're in real problems, as we know, and we saw it tonight. And Adeyemi, one-on-one with Kepa, done really well. It was a massive moment for Borussia Dortmund, who were up against it, and it was like on Saturday against West Ham, and like in a lot of games I've seen from Chelsea this season. The one thing I would say is I was a little bit concerned when we conceded that goal that Chelsea would collapse, because I've seen that a lot this season. When something goes against us, we just completely collapse. I thought Dortmund could score a second, and in the game and the tie, and the evening could look very, very different. I think Chelsea composed themselves, and Chelsea were able to once again place Dortmund under pressure. I think some of that was Dortmund kind of sitting back and trying to withhold a lead to take to Stamford Bridge, which is understandable in a two-legged tie. But once again, just that finishing touch, it was just so near, yet so far at times. Hakim Ziyech, I felt, looked better as the game went on. I felt that there was some nice interplay between, even when Mason Mount came on and João Felix had a chance, which he hit straight at the goalkeeper late on. And, you look at the XG, which I do put a lot of weight into XG, because I think over a period of time it tells you something about a team's creativity and how good they are at fashioning good quality opportunities. I think if you look at the XG and you put some weight into it, Chelsea did enough to win or at least draw that game, at least score one goal. So you can't say coming away from this game that Chelsea were clueless. That I know people were very angry and frustrated at the moment. I'm frustrated at the moment, but I think, if you're just going to wipe that away and say that doesn't matter, I think that, I just don't think that's a very reasonable way to look at, the stats in front of us. And I just look at the context of this game, which was a hostile atmosphere, which is a tense Champions League game. And I think that Chelsea did enough, or at least did enough in terms of creating good opportunities to score more goals. And the complexion of the game looks a lot different, but we've been having this conversation now for at least half a decade around Chelsea's finishing, and I know they were saying on commentary, getting to the summer, and I've actually seen reports in the last week, Chelsea going in for a centre forward. But then I also wonder, we're still early days with a lot of these players. Joao Felix scored at the weekend. Maybe linking up with Kai Havertz a bit more. We didn't have David Datro Fofana tonight, who I'd like to see a bit more of. I'm not saying Fofana's going to bang in, loads and loads of goals. But, Noni Manawake obviously wasn't involved tonight. We had no Raheem Sterling, no Christian Pulisic. So there were other players in and around, who weren't available tonight for Chelsea, who maybe could have made a difference in that department. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, I think that's going to be a very easy narrative over the next few days. I can imagine it. Why isn't Aubameyang in the squad? I think that since October, Aubameyang hasn't been doing much at all when he's been on the pitch for Chelsea. So I don't think that's. I think that's a very easy argument to make right now, and was always going to be an easy argument to make once that player was out of the Champions League squad for Chelsea. But you look at the numbers so far in 2023. I think this is from Opta. 4 goals. Chelsea have scored just 4 in 9 matches in all competitions, failing to score in 5 of those games. They have drawn a blank in more matches this calendar year so far than any other Premier League club, and that's just, it's just so concerning. It is, and I was saying this after the Fulham game that, that has to turn. That just has to turn. I can sit here for as much as I want and look at XG. I can look at the structure of the team. I can look at individuals who have come in during the January transfer window, who I think are giving something, like Joao Felix. Signs from Mikhailo Mudryk, Enzo Fernandez, Benoit Badiashile, who wasn't involved tonight, Nodi Manawake. I can be excited about it. I think it's fair to be. And I could talk about the injured players coming back, Ben Chilwell, Reece James. But until we start having results, it's very, very difficult, to have vindication for those things. And, Saturday is a pressure game for Chelsea. It is. I know that a lot of people, it's a game Chelsea, of course, should be winning, and it's unacceptable based on Southampton's form and also based on what Chelsea's quality is to not win that game on Saturday. But it just piles more pressure on, and I think that it's hard for me not to repeat myself, and I think that's probably for a lot of you as well, based on what's been happening this season, because it just feels like at times you are watching the same story and over again. It wasn't dreadful tonight. What I've seen, if we contrast this performance with the one against, I'm trying to think back to recent months, Man City away in the FA Cup, Fulham away. The way I feel after those performances are not comparable tonight, and it's a very close game going into the second leg, and it's quite a few weeks away, so Chelsea can maybe build up some confidence. But I don't know, man. It's just brutal at the moment watching Chelsea. It really is, and it's hard to go into many games with a lot of confidence, and even when you're sort of bracing yourself for disappointment, I feel like MJ in No Way Home, where she says that if you don't expect disappointment, what is the quote? I think if you don't expect disappointment, if you expect nothing, you won't be disappointed. I've completely butchered that line. And I know Nick Williams from That Chelsea Pod will be grilling me for not knowing that quote off by hand. But, just, not expecting much, at the moment. And you still get disappointed with Chelsea. That's the way it is this year. But hopefully Chelsea can turn around. I mean, it's a quick turnaround in preparation for Saturday. I think that if we go by the evidence of tonight with a lesser opposition, if we go with a similar group of players, I would hope that there is a reaction again on Saturday and Chelsea can get back on track and win. And, with I said this before, West Ham, and unfortunately we didn't see it against West Ham, but I hope that with some of the opponents coming up for Chelsea, particularly at home, the likes of Southampton, the likes of Leeds, the likes of Everton over the next month, there is chance to fix some of these attacking problems. If not all of them can be fixed until next season, at least there can be some confidence before we reach that second leg. But it's going to be a massive obstacle because it has been for so long at this club with a variety of players. So those are my thoughts. It's just not fun, is it? It's you just think. I've just been watching so many games recently from different leagues, and you sit there and it's like the odds. Surely, like Chelsea are going to get a big win at some point. Surely it's got to turn. Like the odds have to turn in our favour, like from Hunger Games at some point. Like it has to, even if it's just like one game. I don't know if that game is going to be Spurs away. But we can only hope at the moment, because although tonight's performance in isolation, I think was, I'm not going to call it amazing because we didn't score, but was encouraging, and I don't think was atrocious. I think you're being hyperbolic if you say that. The criticisms that have remained about this coach, this group of players, I think will mainly be sticking after tonight. Maybe I'm being too harsh and being too reactionary myself, but those are my thoughts. Thank you guys for watching. Follow me on Twitter @SonOfChelsea, and I will see you again very soon. All the best.